Hi, I'm Hillsborough County Commissioner Stacy White, and you're watching Tampa Bay Community Network.
Hi, I'm Bill Hodges, and this is Spotlight on Government, and I have a guest today who I've come to really like, and he's actually my Board of County Commissioners Commissioner, Stacy White, District 4. Glad to have you on the program.
Bill, I'm glad to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
It's been a wonderful year and a half for you.
I think so.
About that long anyway.
It's about that long. I've been a commissioner for about a year and a half now. Of course, I served on the Hillsborough County School Board for 4 years before becoming a commissioner, but I feel like I've gotten much accomplished in just a short year and a half on the board.
Out of curiosity, since you mentioned the school board, which is easier, this job or the school board?
Oh boy, you know, they both have their challenges, but I tell you, when you look at being a school board member, you have a lot of moms and dads out there that get very passionate about their kids and the education system. So sometimes, you know, you really take part in some vibrant conversations.
I've often said to people that the hardest job is that school board job, because you report to everybody.
That is correct, and certainly as a commissioner, you report to everyone as well. But it's been a productive year and a half. I've already gotten much accomplished. I'm very grateful to my fellow commissioners for making me an officer of the board. In only my second year as a commissioner, I was named board chaplain. Certainly the 3 officer positions are chairman, vice chairman, and chaplain. So it's been a tremendous honor to get to serve in leadership on the board. Well,
we see you out in Sun City Center quite a bit.
Absolutely. We always have a lot going on down in Sun City Center. It's always a pleasure to get down there. And
they'll always tell you what they think.
And that's a good thing. You know, I always agree.
Retirees.
And that's a good thing. I welcome that. You know, oftentimes you get a better idea of the issues that are going on, and you get the best ideas from being out in the field. And I have an even closer connection to Sun City Center now, in that my in-laws have recently built a home there. So
oh, wonderful.
My in-laws are now Sun City Center residents.
Isn't that great? Do they live in the association side or Kings Point?
The association side, just off of Pebble Beach.
That's really beautiful down there. It's right, golf courses and all that down there.
I love it.
Well, let's talk about what you think some of the accomplishments you've had in the last year and a half.
Sure. So in the most recent budgetary cycle, I was successful in getting money budgeted for our ELAP program. That's our environmental lands program, and also for our parks. I ran on a platform of talking about how essential it is for us to preserve our natural spaces in Hillsborough County, but also to have adequate space for regional and neighborhood parks. That preserves green space within the county. It also gives families a place where they can go out and enjoy the outdoors, enjoy the fresh air here in Florida. We have so much to offer. So I'm pleased that money's budgeted, and we're moving forward and looking for new environmental land sites, and also identifying some areas for enhanced regional park and neighborhood park assets.
I remember up in Ohio, before we came down here, that builders, whenever they wanted to do a subdivision of any kind, way, shape, or form, had to donate or to set aside a certain area for parks. Do they have to do that here?
We do oftentimes negotiate that here in Hillsborough County. We also have a parks impact fee that helps to fund acquisition of our parks. So by all means, that's a piece of the equation here in Hillsborough County. But park space is something that's very important. Ranks right in line behind public safety for us here in Hillsborough County. So that's why I've been such a huge supporter of making sure that we have plenty of park space, and making sure that our parks are well maintained and properly staffed as well.
You're probably aware of Club Links very well.
Yes.
And the fact that certain courses have been shut down down in Sun City Center, which I think, I would rather have a wildlife area behind my house than somebody yelling "for" and golf balls slapping in. But it's going to be interesting to see what those areas actually turn into long term.
Sure, and that's something that citizens of Hillsborough County should, really be in tune with. Oftentimes, citizens aren't aware that that golf course behind their home oftentimes, has, regular residential zoning associated with it. So sometimes citizens are quite surprised to learn that the golf course behind them can eventually become a residential neighborhood. But you mentioned just wild
these
space.
in particular were built to the level, I don't understand zoning. I'd be the first one to say that. But I was told that we were built to the density that you could have, and that those areas couldn't be done.
And that's entirely possible in that particular circumstance. But you had mentioned the idea of just having conservation space behind homes versus something like a golf course. That's actually a hot trend in residential planning right now, is to have a home surrounding a conservation area versus something like a golf course.
I have a lake behind my house, but I wouldn't be upset if I had a field area that I could go wander around in either.
And you bring up a good point there as well. We focus a great deal on wetlands and waterways here in Florida, as we should, but we have so much to offer along the way of upland habitats as well.
One of the things that we were talking about before we come on the air was that I'm a farm boy at heart. I mean, I grew up on a farm, and since we moved to Florida, I don't know any farms. And I miss going out on the farm and just walking around and that sort of thing. Are there any, like in Ohio, again, I have to relate to what I remember from years past, they have several places in the county which were operating farms, and they were circa 1865, and they operated in that same manner. Are there any places in in Hillsborough County that are like that?
Yeah, agriculture is still a significant sector of our economy here in Hillsborough County. And when we were talking before the show, I had mentioned that, we really need to make sure that we're working closely with the agricultural community. That's not a sector, in my opinion, that we want to have significantly shrink or heaven forbid disappear from our economy. And, when we look at the housing crisis in that 2006 to 2008 ballpark, agriculture was one of the industries that just, continued along on a steady trajectory. And, we were really blessed to have the agricultural portion of our economic sector here in Hillsborough County during those times. So I think that really helped us to recognize just how important of an industry agriculture is.
How big is agriculture in Hillsborough County? Do you have any numbers that?
I didn't come prepared with an exact dollar figure, but it is a significant.
Don't hold them to the exact dollar figure.
Yeah, it definitely is a tremendous sector of our economy, though, and one that we just want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to support farmers and ranchers, and for those that wish to remain in the industry, that we're not, through policy, putting some type of pressure on them that would make it more and more difficult for them to operate and be successful.
I've always felt when it comes to taxes on property, I would like to see, as it is now, an agricultural subsidy on taxes, keeping it down. But I've also thought there's a windfall profit when they sell that. And that somewhere along the line, some of those taxes should accumulate.
Yeah, and we don't have any type of ag subsidy per se in Hillsborough County.
Except for the property taxes are much lower.
Correct. We do have the green belt provision,
Right.
and that's actually been a tremendous support for farmers and ranchers here in Hillsborough County, and that's the type of thing that I want to see continued. Leave those things in place so that we can be supportive of our farmers and ranchers.
Yeah, it's very difficult today's world to run a ranch or a farm,
especially in a county that's becoming more and more urbanized, like Hillsborough County. So
the cost per acre of buying land or keeping it is very expensive, plus all the equipment Of course, some of you farmers bring that on yourselves. I remember when we had one tractor amongst 3 of us farms. You know, today everybody has to have the new one with the air conditioning and the Wi-Fi and the whole 9 yards.
Right, and certainly those are individual business decisions, but again, when we look at things like green belting, you know, things that we can do to help farmers to not be overburdened with the cost of keeping their land,
Right.
I think that's important. So.
And making sure they can pass it on to their family.
Absolutely. You know, we've talked about green space, and our agricultural lands are really a significant portion of our green space in Hillsborough County. Frankly, our quality of life as well. So that's why, particularly as the District 4 Commissioner, I have a lot of agriculture within my district. And it's always been a tremendous pleasure for me to support our farmers and ranchers to the greatest extent
I think Adam Putnam,
possible.
speaking of somebody who supports ranchers and farmers, Adam Putnam's done a very good job as agricultural commissioner.
He has. You know, Adam comes from a ranching family himself.
He's been on this show a number of times.
And he's a great man, and he's done a tremendous job as agriculture commissioner here in Florida.
I asked him why, right after he decided not to run for Congress again. And I said, why did you do that? You're giving up a safe seat? And he looked at me sitting right where you are now. And he said, Bill, I had to get out of Washington with at least some of my soul intact.
Yeah, you've got to salute him for that as well. He wanted to come home, as I understand it, and be closer to his family.
Yep.
And you know, really work hard on
He loves
issues
Florida.
of his beloved state of Florida.
Yeah, he does.
Absolutely.
Let's talk transportation.
Absolutely.
It's one of the big hot buttons. Every time transportation comes up, there's 6 people who want to spend a whole lot of money and another 6 over here that don't want to spend any and think buggies and horses were just fine. So where do you stand on the transportation issues?
Sure. So I talked earlier about parks and environmental lands, and I mentioned how they were a priority in line behind public safety. Well, transportation is certainly probably between those two. You know, you look at public safety, you look at transportation infrastructure as an important priority, and then you start to get into parks and things like that, so on and so forth. So certainly the board has had a vibrant debate and deliberations over the transportation issue. As you know, a half-cent sales tax referendum was recommended by the county administrator. It was defeated on very close lines, 4-3, by the board. And what the board has come up with instead, and I was a supporter of this, is a TIF, a tax increment financing plan.
Okay.
And what that will do, and I can go into more detail on what the TIF is, what it would entail, but it will allow us to plow nearly $1 billion into transportation infrastructure in Hillsborough County over a 10-year period without raising taxes. And that's what I liked so much about the TIF.
There's no such thing as a free lunch. So $1 billion is coming from somewhere. Where would it be coming from?
It's going to come from increases to the tax rolls that result from new construction and increases in home values. So without even raising the property tax millage rate, the county will experience revenue surpluses year over year that happens just as a result of home values rising and new homes being built in the area.
Taxes will, what I pay the county is going to go up.
Well, and
that would anyway.
And that's always been the case. Now, remember though, that's capped.
I really
based
fought
upon,
to get mine down during the downturn.
Absolutely, but remember that's capped based upon the Save Our Homes
3%
legislation and homestead exemption. But when you look at the increase in the tax rolls from increase in home values and new construction, what this TIF would do is allow us to take a percentage of the new growth, the new revenues only. And we've talked about, taking anywhere from 1/3 to 1/2 of those year-over-year revenue increases. But remember, when you're talking about increase in property tax revenue due to new construction and increase in home values, remember those are recurring dollars in the budget. Those aren't one-time dollars.
Yeah.
So what you do is you capture a portion of those increases on a recurring basis. So you get sort of this compounding effect. So you're looking at your revenue increases from a base year that's established in the first year that you establish the TIF. So even at taking just a third of those new dollars from that natural growth, we could plow nearly $1 billion into transportation and still leave the county administrator plenty of funds to do things like give his employees pay raises and take care of parks and pet resources and all those other county priorities.
One of the things that I kind of wondered at is the amount of money that goes to various pet projects, as far as, well, like this expressway project that they're talking about right now. And why don't we have any rail in this area? And why aren't the people who, and we can take these one at a time, but why aren't the people who are using this being charged? For instance, the gasoline tax.
Right.
It's minuscule. I don't understand. If Shell Oil or British Petroleum or somebody decides, some guy sitting on high, listen, we're going to go up 10 cents a gallon today, and nobody says anything.
Right.
Or 20 cents or even $1. Nobody says anything. Why shouldn't, when it gets down to this $2 and some odd cents, has the county looked at saying, look, we're going to add 10 cents here? Nobody will even notice it before long.
So the gas tax was definitely discussed as we went through this process that's been dubbed Go Hillsborough, and what ended up bubbling up out of it was that referendum proposal, which was defeated by the board. Gas taxes were definitely discussed as part of that process. Gas taxes are not wildly popular among the electorate as a whole at this point, but I think it's a discussion, a dialogue that we should continue to have, because a gas tax takes on the form of a user fee. A lot of folks have pointed that out. So I think in the long run that could make it more palatable. So I'm more than happy to continue to have the dialogue on a gas tax, but at this point,
well,
the
no
board
tax
has
is
established.
wildly popular.
You're right. You're right.
I don't care,
You're right.
care what you have.
Yeah.
But
So
I'm thinking to myself, I watch, I get up in the morning, and all of a sudden, between Sun City Center and Brandon, at one station, because we looked at it yesterday, there was a 19-cent difference. Same company,
Right.
a 19-cent difference per gallon. It does not seem to me that if the county dropped a 20 cents additional tax on that gasoline, you see a whole lot of kickback any more than a month.
Right.
And all of a sudden it's right in the middle.
And the county is already levying a gas tax, but we do have.
Do you know what that is offhand?
I believe it's 5 cents per gallon, and we have another 5 cents per gallon that we can legally levy here in the county. And it may be 6 cents per gallon now that I think about it that we're already levying. But certainly that's a dialogue that I want to continue to engage in. But
When you look at what the oil companies do to us every day, and they're reaping billions.
Yeah.
It would seem to me that that would be a less painful way than a lot of other ways.
Right.
I mean, you want a user fee, the new expressway, it's not going to be free. Those that can afford it can use it, but those that can't won't. Yeah. We 90% of the time, when I look at the toll road going into Tampa, it's empty. It's empty.
Yeah.
And yet, if I want to go from here to here, it costs me $2.50.
Right. So what you're touching on there is that TBX project that the Metropolitan Planning Organization recently approved in the Transportation Improvement Plan. And I sit on the MPO as a county commissioner. So going back to Go Hillsborough, the board is full steam ahead on this TIF idea right now. We're anxious to get that established and moving forward. At that point, you look beyond a few years of the TIF and we could continue the dialogue.
I don't think TIF's a bad idea. I
Yeah.
mean, obviously you're tapping into a source,
Right.
but it's not free money. It's being paid for.
Yeah, well, it's a reallocation of the budget and making transportation the priority that it should be.
Well, as my house goes up in value, I'm paying more.
Well, that's true.
So,
That's true.
so I'm being taxed more. I mean, you haven't passed a higher tax,
Right.
but my house has gone up in value, so the tax amount goes up.
Yeah,
So
and
I'm
that-
paying for it.
Right, and that's always been true in
That's why I say
Florida's property
there is no
tax
such
system,
thing as
so-
free money. So
Yeah.
wildly loving gas taxes? No, I don't.
Yeah.
But all these taxes, they
Mm-hmm.
are going to be paid by somebody.
Right. Well, again, I want to continue to have the dialogue on the gas tax. Certainly, once this TIF is off the ground, up and running, that also, takes us to the CIT tax, which is, only 10 years away from sunsetting. That's certainly an existing tax that perhaps at some point could be reauthorized with a portion of that, a healthy portion of that being dedicated to transportation. That's where you could see some of those more robust transportation options.
Are we
begin to
looking
take
at light
shape.
rail ever, anywhere?
So,
Or
certainly.
just more buses?
Yeah, certainly my constituency in District 4, has not been a fan of light rail at this point, and that ties into land use policy, which we can talk further about. But light rail, at least for now, I think is off the table. But you never know where the attitudes of the community will stand in 10, 15, 20 years from now. So.
What is on the table then? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we've already got 6 lanes coming down from Riverview
Right.
to 674.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand those lanes are going to go past there.
Right.
Are we going to go to 8 lanes?
Well, so that's a good segue into the land use piece as well. But if we look at the here and now of our transportation infrastructure, certainly TBX is going to be that widening of I-4, I-275. That's been controversial to say the least. There certainly will be some communities that will be disrupted by that.
Literally destroyed.
I wouldn't say destroyed in full, but certainly there would be homes in the path of the widening. Certainly the lanes that would be added would be toll lanes. So they have been referred to as Lexus lanes and things
Exactly.
like that. But the argument is that as folks that want to pay that toll move to those lanes, it frees up the other lanes for other travelers. So the philosophy is that it's a net gain, a net benefit for all the drivers on the road. We've talked about things like a high-speed ferry from the South County area to McDill and back. So
Yeah,
that's
that-
kind of a unique transportation option.
That's interesting
on the
too.
table,
I
so.
find that fascinating.
Absolutely.
I don't know whether it's economically feasible or not.
Yeah, we are still working on that. We want to make sure that it's going to be economically
Someday I
feasible
want Sandy
before-
to come on and talk about that because she's deep in it.
Absolutely, and Sandy and I sort of split that South Shore area, so that concept is an important concept for both of us, but certainly we're taking a hard look at ridership projections, the overall economic feasibility. You're absolutely right. The board will want to be assured that it's economically feasible before we move forward on something like that. But you've touched on light rail and some other issues, and I have been very vocal in stating that my assessment of the situation is that land use policy has really gotten us in this mess in Hillsborough County. I'm a native of the area, a lifelong resident, and the land use decisions that we've made, particularly over the past 30 to 40 years, I don't think have been conducive to an efficient transportation system. And a lot of folks, myself included, specifically point to the issue of suburban sprawl.
Oh, yes.
Here in Hillsborough County. So I've been talking a lot about taking a close look at land use policy, making sure that we're encouraging more dense urban development near the urban core, understanding that we still need further suburban development, but that we also need to preserve choices for our current and future residents between urban, suburban, and rural living.
Well, I'm glad to
talked
hear you
about
saying that because
agriculture.
it's very important.
It is.
Without a core, without a strong core,
Right.
even the body, without a good core,
Right.
isn't going to hold up. And if Tampa falls, we're in deep trouble.
You're absolutely right. We do need a strong urban core. I'm very excited about Jeff Vinnick's vision for the Channel Side area.
Yes.
I think that'll bring
I'd love to have
that
him on the
strong
show.
urban. I think that would be wonderful, you know. But I think that will provide for the urban living opportunities that have been lacking in the Tampa urban core for so long. So I have successfully gotten a land use workshop scheduled, so that's going to be coming up in the very near future.
And who will attend that?
It'll be the county commission,
Okay.
and then our staff members, the county
Okay.
administrator, our infrastructure and development chief, you know, will present to us on some things that we could perhaps look at differently with respect to land use policy. One thing I've been looking closely at is TDR, or transfer of development rights. That's already on the books in Hillsborough County in our land development code, but it's been underutilized, frankly, almost zero utilization. But the idea behind TDR, and it has been wildly successful in other communities, is to give rural landowners the opportunity to transfer development density rights to a landowner closer to the urban core, perhaps with a bonus added to that. And that helps to preserve the green space, the rural living opportunities in the far stretches of the county, and encourages a more dense urban growth near the urban core. And that's a win-win, especially when we look at the transportation infrastructure issue. Then we're not trying to run expensive roads and other transportation infrastructure to the far stretches of the county, but we're focusing on that area near the urban core.
I promised you 2 minutes, but I can only give you one to actually talk directly to your constituents.
Sure. It's been an absolute blessing and pleasure to serve as your county commissioner for almost 2 years now. I'm blessed to have been put into a leadership position on the board, and I'm focusing on the issues that really matter and that really hit close to home: environmental lands, parks, transportation infrastructure, and quality of life. And that boils down to things like land use policy and preserving those choices for our residents.
There's so many more things I'd like to ask you, and you're fond of information. I think it's great. Will you come back?
I will absolutely come back,
Promise?
Bill. I promise. It's an absolute pleasure to be on your show.
I don't want it to be a whole year. I want you to come back in less than a year and talk about this land use and about transportation in particular, because it's really hot.
Yeah, let's not let a year pass by. I'd love to come back in a few months.
All right? I'm going to have my producer get a hold of your staff.
Sounds
We'll
good.
get it done.
Thanks, Bill.
Commissioner White, District 4, Sun City Center, and that whole area, Waimama, bigger Riverview.
I like to say that I go from Plant City to Sun City. It's huge geographically.
I'm Bill Hodges. This is Spotlight on Government. You're unique, you're special, and you're great. Tell yourself so often, because you are, you know. And again, Commissioner White, just a great pleasure to have you on.
As
And please
always.
tell your wife I said hello, will you?
I will.